This is an overview of the different types of ways to leave the body. Not the techniques to achieve out of body, but the experience of leaving the body. Although there are a couple of quickie techniques included. And the first one, which is probably one of the most common and certainly one of the most memorable, is the vibrational experience. This is the most intense, and it can be very exciting, and it can also be very frightening way of leaving the body. And it usually starts with feeling of a vibrational energy that can either come through the top of the head and then fills the body, or it can come from one of the extremities of the body, like fingertips. An easy technique that doesn't take long to get down is laying perfectly still for about 15 minutes so that your brain thinks your body is asleep. And then focus your attention on your fingertips. And you can kind of either feel or initiate a small tingling feeling in the end of your fingertips. And by focusing on it, you can move it into your fingers, into your hands, into your arms. And as it gets into your body, at that point, as soon as it starts coming into your torso, it's pretty easy to pop out of your body. It's common in the vibrational technique that as the vibrations increase, so too will a noise. It's almost as if the vibration is happening on the acoustical level as well as on the physical level. And when you actually start to leave the body, the noise can get insanely loud, almost frighteningly loud. And then, boom, you're out. And then there's silence. Many of the people that claim or feel that they have been abducted, this type of out-of-body experience is associated with people that think their body is being taken over by an alien force. Now, when you leave your body this way, you're in the low astral, but it's very defined, really defined. Like the physical things and the astral things look almost identical. Like if you pop out in your room, you look around, you see your room. You see the pictures hanging on the wall, etc., etc. It's very easy to move through the walls, see what's inside the walls. I mean, it's very connected to the physical. And if you go outside, for example, when I lived in New York City, I lived in an area that was very populated by homeless people, drunks, drug addicts, etc. It was a bad neighborhood. When I went outside, I could see the homeless people, and I could see the ghosts of the homeless people. And I could identify them by how they saw me. Obviously, the living people didn't notice me at all. But the ones who had died and were still hanging out on the street, they saw me. And they saw me very suspiciously. I felt threatened. As they saw me, it looked like they really were not happy with me being there. So it was pretty much the same as when they were alive. Looking at people passing by menacingly. They hadn't changed much since they died. In one of the experiences, when I was dislodging from my body in this way, I actually saw on a cellular level the disconnecting of the astral energy or the astral body from the cell. The physical cell. It was almost like I don't want to say they were astral cells, but there was the energy in the cell that was vibrating away, and that vibration dislodged it from the physical cell. So when you're out of your body, you don't have cells in the same way you do, but you do have the same energy as the cells. So we can think of cells as like specific instances of that same energy within the context of the physical world. Another thing to be aware of, not just with this technique, but whenever you're in the lower astral, because it's so close to the physical, you will see the physical world, but you'll also often see other things that are not in the physical world that are in the landscape on the astral world. What we see in that state is not necessarily what's actually there, but how we interpret it. And a good example of this is when I lived in it was an ashram kind of space. And people used to come from all over to meditate in a particular room that we had. It was an entire building in Brooklyn. And one of the floors was dedicated to meditation and practices and that sort of thing. And people would come and they would have meditations and prayers and ceremonies and whatever. I lived above that, the floor above. And the stairs that went out of my room went down to the floor below. And the stairs, from the stairs, you could see the entranceway, the doorway, the double doors that entered into that room, which were almost always closed. But one time I vibrated out of my body, floated out my door, down the stairs, and as I looked down at the double doors, I saw piles of hefty bags, sealed hefty bags that were, it looked like piles of garbage. I don't know what was in the hefty bags, but it looked like bags of garbage. Everything else looked exactly like the actual physical space. And I didn't understand what I was looking at. I later came to understand that that garbage was the garbage that people left there when they came to do their exercises. Because the fact is, most people going to that space, they were going there because they were looking for some kind of relief. They had a lot of garbage they were carrying around. They were looking for a way to get rid of it. And they got rid of it there. So you can have symbolic representations of things that do exist in the physical. I mean, in the physical form, that energy was still there. You just couldn't see it. So now I was seeing it, and it was taking on a symbolic form that made sense to me. So if you're out in the lower astral, kind of pay attention to the symbolic symbols, the things that are not in the physical, because they're telling you something. Another technique is what I'm going to call the push. While this is typically a technique for only super advanced OOBEers, where they can just literally push themselves out of their body at will, it's also a technique that can be integrated in with many of the other techniques, because at some point you have to push yourself out. Unless it's something like a near-death experience or something like that, there has to be a conscious intention to move yourself out of the body, and that's the push. Lucidity, as in like lucid dreams, might be considered a form of OOB, of out-of-body experiences. But it's more like, but you're in a reality of your own construct. It's kind of like you're having an inner out-of-body experience. However, there are anecdotal stories of lucid dreamers who, even in their subjective reality that they're in, have some interaction with the shared reality of the outer world. Lucid dreaming, I believe, I don't have numbers on this, but I believe it's more common than out-of-body experiences. But they are very closely related, and a number of experts in this area also consider them cousins. So a lucid dream could actually kind of morph into or result in a more legitimate out-of-body experience. Unlike some out-of-body experiences, lucid dreams can't be verified. And that's an argument that's made, saying, well, no, they're not OOBEs. But we can't even prove that this reality isn't some sort of a quote-unquote dream. For every test that we can think of, first requires that we validate the existence of this reality for the test to work in the first place. So it's a circular argument. And at least from my perspective, the more important, well, maybe not more important, but as important as anything else is whether you're having a subjective experience or objective or out of body or lucid, or the thing that's real is the awareness and the experience. That's the part that's real. So whether you can read numbers on a wall in another town or touch something physical that sets off an alarm or whatever, to me that's phenomenology. That's more of a curiosity. The reality part is, where is your awareness and what are you experiencing from that perspective? There's also a thing called OOBE flashbacks. At least that's what I call them, which is a spontaneous OOBE that can take place just for a moment. Just you could be boom out of your body and then boom back in. And I think this is because I think this happens only after you've experienced OOBEs, and I think what happens is the neural pathways become accepting of this, and as they get used, they become more accessible. And under certain conditions, which ones I don't exactly know, but under certain conditions, your consciousness can like escape for a moment or pop out for a moment or go somewhere for a moment and come back. I mean, I've had those experiences, but honestly, I don't know what initiates them. But that leads into another type, which is the spontaneous type of OOBE, which is when you're not expecting it. Usually it's when you're laying down, you're about to go to sleep, or it's in the early morning and you've slightly woken up. You're still half awake, half conscious, but you're not really tired. You're just you're coming out of sleep, not going into it. And then your body, your spirit body, just kind of leaves, just goes out. One way to explain this, or describe it, or think of it, is that your awareness shifts from being a physically centered awareness to a non-physical centered awareness. And in that state, the physical body simply becomes another channel for the energy of consciousness. Could be your physical body, could be the astral body. In that particular state, when you're not really connected or anchored, when you're not anchored to any particular body, they're more or less equal. It's kind of like you can go to one or go to the other. Why and how that decision is made, at least in my experience, seems to be unconscious. I don't know why, but sometimes you can just find yourself out of your body. And I think that actually happens to a lot of people, and if they're not used to it, or if it's a new experience for them, they'll immediately come back and they'll be like, well, that was weird. What was that? But if you are used to it, you can be comfortable there and you're not going to pop back in. And in that state, when you're kind of in between bodies, when your consciousness is like free floating, going into the body is more like an in-body experience. In other words, we say the word out-of-body experience because we've left the body, but the reality is we don't exist in our body. Our body exists within our consciousness. Just happens to be anchored temporarily in the body, but it could just as easily be anchored elsewhere. And that's kind of like what learning how to leave the body is about. Anchoring your consciousness to another pattern, another instance of your being. But in that state, coming into your body, being in your body like we are pretty much, most of the day, could be considered an in-body experience. And that is similar to the out-of-body experience that you could have at pre-sleep. When you're in that window and you're kind of, again, your consciousness is free-floating. Although when trying to get there pre-sleep, 99% of the time you just end up going to sleep. It's kind of like the astronauts come back to Earth. They have to come in at a certain angle. Too steep and they burn up. Too slow and they bounce off back into space. It's kind of like that. You've got a very, very narrow window that if you can maintain awareness, maintain consciousness as you're going to sleep, you can pop out easily. But it's really narrow, and it's hard to find, and it's hard to stay on track. Sleep itself actually could be considered a prelude to out-of-body experience if we assume or consider that we have out-of-body experiences when we're asleep and we just don't remember them. It's estimated that 25% of the world's population has had some kind of out-of-body experience at some point. Now, I don't have the data on this. It's almost impossible to collect data on this, I think. But it's safe to assume that when we are asleep and the consciousness is no longer anchored to our body, we're out of body one way or the other. We're either deep in our unconscious or we're out there floating around. And sometimes you can kind of recognize what dreams were actually out of body experiences when you wake up. In my particular experience, the out of body experiences tend to be really coherent, where dreams where I'm rehashing the day's events or other worries, concerns, or whatever is going on, it tends to be more chaotic and crazy and doesn't really follow a linear path. But the out of bodies follow a very linear path, A, B, C, D. And they make sense. And they're usually enlightening in some way. You either have learned something or experienced something or seen something that is of value. I hesitate to call NDEs or near-death experiences out-of-body experiences in the traditional sense, because while they certainly are, they're very, very different than a regular out-of-body experience. There are thousands and thousands of people who have had near-death experiences. And they, even though their stories are not identical, although many of them are quite similar and fall into maybe 3 or 4 different types of experiences, the difference between an NDE and a out-of-body experience is NDE experience almost always seem to be guided. Someone pops out of their body on the operating table, and there is something or somebody or some spirit or some entity or some beam of light or whatever that is there to greet them, to whatever, show them around, to explain what's going on, to tell them what they need to do, etc., etc. And almost all of the experiences that people have had in NDE, where they are being shown around, are amazing. But it's kind of like they're being given a tour. It's kind of like when you go on a tour of New York City. You get to see the opera house, the library, the museum, the park, right? You only see the best and the most beautiful of how amazing New York City is. Nobody goes on a tour where we see, Red Hook, the South Bronx, the projects. Those are tours nobody wants to go on. People who voluntarily leave their body, when they're out there, they have access to all of that. They can go to the beautiful places, the ugly places. They can go to the heavens and hells that exist out there. They're on their own. They're free agents, essentially. More or less. There's restrictions on their movement. When you're out of your body, there are restrictions on your movement. That is absolutely the case. But when you have a near-death experience, you're being guided. So it's kind of like a very one-sided experience. A very beautiful one-sided experience, but it's not the whole picture of what's on the other side. The same reason that people have near-death experiences is because of the physical stress. In this case, the stress is so great, they died. But people who are under tremendous physical, mental, or psychological stress, they actually are more likely to have out-of-body experiences. And we saw this in the Vietnam War. There was a lot of the POWs reported having out-of-body experiences, mainly because of the unbearable stress of the POW camps. that they had to endure. In a way, it's a survival mechanism. And at the same time, it's an evolutionary mechanism. Another type of OBE can be called induced OBEs. And this is when external tools are used to help you leave your body. This could be headphones, binaural beats, transdermal cranial stimulation, biofeedback devices, that sort of thing. But it could also be certain kinds of drugs, LSD or psilocybin or DMT. They absolutely will help you leave your body. You may not end up in the place that you think you're going to end up, but it will be an out-of-body experience. Not always, of course, but it can result in that. There's also the common plants and common drugs that have been used for quite a long time to help induce out-of-body experiences. Mandrake root, for example, is one of those. And I tried that once, and it was interesting. What it did is it kind of disconnects you from your body. It like numbs. That doesn't really numb your body, but it seems to, it seems to make your body less important. It disconnects you from your body in some way, and that disconnection obviously can help you get out. There's also a bunch of other plants and things that contain like the tropane alkaloids, thornapple, Jimson weed, datura, but these are dangerous. So I highly recommend you don't try those. They can induce permanent psychosis and have all kinds of biological and physiological side effects. But they have been used for thousands of years to induce out-of-body experiences. Certain over-the-counter drugs, such as galantamine, or the other one is, I'm reading it here, Calea zacatachichi, okay, and Selene capensis. These are over-the-counter natural drugs, or natural components that are said to help leave the body. I tried the galantamine, didn't really notice any difference. Have not tried the Calea zacatachichi or the Selene capensis. So I have nothing to say about that. There's another technique which I really never heard anyone talk about, but I've used it with some success, and I'm going to call it chi swinging. And that is, and I don't know if this works for anybody else, but that's when you lay down, imagine yourself in a hammock, for example. Could be a swing also, something that can swing slightly. And start imagining that you are very slightly swinging left and right, like a quarter inch left and then a quarter inch right, quarter inch left, quarter inch right. See yourself in the hammock and feel your body swinging, and eventually you will actually feel like you're swinging just a little bit, but you're obviously not swinging. I don't know if it's your astral body or your chi body or whatever, but some part of your being is doing the swinging. Even if this doesn't result in an out-of-body experience, this is a very good exercise to get your brain accustomed to the idea that this other body does exist. A body that is not bound by your physical body. Even if it's just swinging a little bit. It hangs out near your physical body, but it's not controlled by your physical body. Once the brain catches that idea, more doors open. More possibilities become apparent. So once you're out of your body, there are different states. We already mentioned the ghost state, which is the low astral. There's also and these are terms I'm just coming up with here. I'm sure other people have other words for them. There's the spirit state, which is actually a high astral, And this is the realm where kind of like this is the realm where real magic happens. This is where the mechanics of the physical world start coming into place, where the dualities begin interacting with each other in accordance to the laws of creation, not just the physical, but the laws of creation that exist in the non-physical as well. So it's the beginning of the stream that ultimately ends up in the physical. It's at this level where we see how the dualities interact to create the different patterns of energy that ultimately end up as atoms and galaxies, and how they're both based on the same laws. At this level, it's very clear to see how the slightest change in one atom can have dramatic changes across the entire universe. This is actually very similar to that same concept behind chaos theory. It's kind of like the butterfly effect, but in multi-dimensions and across all of existence. And the butterfly effect is how the turbulence caused by a butterfly flapping its wings in Japan can cause a hurricane, 3 months later in Louisiana, kind of thing. It's the idea behind chaos, where a small difference can have unpredictable changes in the future. On this level, you see that very, very clearly, because on this level, you see how every piece of the whole is connected to every other piece. So you can't change one thing without changing everything. There's another state, which maybe this doesn't even belong in this conversation, but I'm going to put it in there anyway, which I'm going to call the parallel state. And this is where there are some OOBEs that are not only disconnected from the physical body and the life that it identifies with, but seem to be connected to other bodies, another life, possibly in another time. So you can leave your body, but find yourself in another body, in another time, in another place, not necessarily even in physical. It could be another non-physical being. But it's somebody else. It's someone that you're not familiar with. I mean, you don't recognize it as who you think you are. I call this a parallel state because I can only assume, that these are other parallel versions of us in different realities that are part of our larger being. So I leave my physical body, but I haven't left my larger body, my collective body, if that's the right word to say. And I find myself in a different body with a different personality, different desires, and different history. So in one sense, we can't really even call these out-of-body experiences, because the concept of an OOBE depends on the belief that one body has one spirit. Were that not so, we would see ourselves as expressions of each other, and that would have bizarre and comical, if not ultimately wonderful, consequences. But it's very contrary to the way we see who we are in our reality now. It might also be the case that we're just popping into somebody else's body, which is not as unusual as that might sound, because in the second treatise of the Great Seth, which is a Gnostic text, and it is in the second tractate of the Codex 7 of the Nag Hammadi Library, Seth, who was the third child of Adam and the replacement seed of the good son after Abel was killed, wanted to use somebody else's body in order to infiltrate the archons. And, as it is quoted in the Nag Hammadi text, Seth says, "I visited a bodily dwelling. I cast out the one who was in it first, and I went in." Which seems very rude, but apparently popping into somebody else's body is an old tradition. And if you don't know what the Nag Hammadi is, very briefly, it was a collection of early Christian and Gnostic texts discovered in Upper Egypt in the town of Nag Hammadi in 1945. And it was a whole bunch of information going all the way back 2,000 years and earlier that was pretty revolutionary. And some of it is quite contrary to what we've been taught as far as Christianity and history goes. But these were the original texts that were found, so it's kind of hard to argue with them. The way I understand this, the model that's in my head is we do have spiritual brothers and sisters, those with whom we share a close connection with, as if they were another leaf on the same branch of life from which we sprang as well. If we stop being the leaf and start being the branch, we become aware of all of, quote unquote, our leaves. When you leave your body, it may be that you've left one body, but you're still part of that same branch. So it's not unreasonable to think you might end up in one of the other leaves of that branch, so to speak, metaphorically. It's really difficult to talk about these ideas and concepts without using metaphors or inventing new words or having to use roundabout descriptions. But hopefully you get the idea. In my case, one of the odder experiences I had specifically was I started having memories of two different families or two different people, dramatically clear memories. One came from an older black mother living with her grown boys in a rural shack on a farm somewhere in the deep American South. And this would have been in like the 1950s or the 1960s. And I remember very clearly as I was doing my thing in this body, in this, as me, doing whatever I was doing, washing the dishes or driving to the store or something. And I would have these strong, overwhelming worries about my boys, if they were okay. Because I was worrying about a problem that one of my boys was having. And I remember that I had to tend to the animals. I'm like, okay, stuff like that. And another set of memories came from a fairly middle-class young wife. And as soon as I caught myself having these memories, I would recoil and snap back to myself. But after a while, I thought that rather than recoil, I should respond with as much understanding, love, support, and light that I could. The idea being that if I was picking up their life in real time, then maybe they were picking up mine. So the best thing I could do was respond with love. This was my responsibility to myself, I thought, as their health and happiness affected the other leaves on the same branch, including me. Eventually, these memories faded away after about a year. And I believe this happened because it was during that time I was doing a lot of out-of-body stuff, exploring a lot. I think maybe I had gone somewhere that connected me to these folks, and it took a while for that connection to fade, or at least consciously to fade. The last state is the etheric state. And in this state, there is no bodily identity. This is a rare state, if for no other reason it is underreported, because we don't often remember it when we have it. In this state, there are very few experiences that we can remember or latch onto, because it's in a state that kind of transcends, not that it transcends duality, but everything is kind of unformed. It's a very ethereal state. There are no amazing lights and miraculous color and bizarre beings like there are in the super cool astral. No, this is like the top of the mountain where nothing else lives. So that's an overview of out-of-body stuff. And the reason I shared this is because further on there will be references to these things. And I need a video to say, go watch that video.